Yeah, I'll react to that, sure.
Hey guys, let's learn, become a little bit smarter, shall we? Preemptive like, who actually won the Battle of Jutland? And on the thumbnail, it says the biggest sea battle of World War One. So should be interesting. Original link to the video from Imperial War Museums. Top of the description as always. My name's Connor if you're new. Let's learn. Let's go.
The First World War is synonymous with trench warfare. Long, narrow, muddy and damp ditches carved into the earth, providing shelter to soldiers fighting a war on land. These are the images typically conjured up when we think about this monumental conflict. But as war on the Western Front waged on, other huge battles just as crucial were taking place at sea. Dreadnought battleships, submarines, torpedo boats and destroyers all threatened to clash amongst perilous waves.
Warships look so much cooler in World War II than they do now, because I'm assuming because ship-launched missiles have replaced large, heavy guns. And, I don't know. I just think the silhouette kind of the World War II battleship is just so iconic and cool looking. Also, first submarine, I'm like 40% sure. 50% maybe. The first one was in the American Revolutionary War. I think I heard that somewhere. Let me know if I'm wrong, though, because I'm not very confident. But it was like a wooden... It was obviously much different. I think it had like a screw thing. Anyways, all right, I'm talking too much about something I'm not certain about.
Submarines, torpedo boats and destroyers all threatened to clash amongst perilous waves, as Britain pushed to maintain its blockade against Germany. And the most important naval action seen during the war was the Battle of Jutland. The date was the 31st of May, 1916. Just off the coast of Jutland in Denmark, the largest nautical battle of the First World War was about to take place. The battle, involving 100,000 men and 250 ships, would last close to 2 days. But who threw the first punch, and did Britain actually win the fight? To understand what the Battle of Jutland was and how it came about, we first need to go back almost 20 years.
Before the start of the First World War, Britain and Germany were in a naval arms race. Britain had, for almost 100 years, maintained complete naval supremacy of the seas, established at Trafalgar in 1805. Germany felt threatened by this. At the same time that Germany was establishing its high seas fleet, masterminded by Secretary of State for the Navy, Vice Admiral Alfred von Tirpitz, Britain was developing the HMS Dreadnought. In 1906, Britain launched this impressive new type of naval ship, with 10 guns, steam turbine power, and thick armor.
Sorry, I stupidly had to comment on his beard and then missed important.
For the Navy, Vice Admiral Alfred von Tirpitz, Britain was developing the HMS Dreadnought.
Just come on.
Establishing its high seas fleet, masterminded by Secretary of State for the Navy, Vice Admiral Alfred von Tirpitz, Britain was developing the HMS Dreadnought. In 1906, Britain launched this impressive new type of naval ship, with 10 guns, steam turbine power, and thick armor. The Dreadnought had arrived. It leveled the playing field, and both sides had to start building their fleets again from scratch. These two 15-inch guns from HMS Ramillies and HMS Resolution are a landmark feature of the Imperial War Museum here in London. Although not fired at Jutland, what they do show is the scale of the ships involved in the battle.
Imagine the recoil on these things. How did it not just tear the ships apart after it was fired for a few times? I'd love to learn about the sort of just kind of engineering that went into whatever shock absorbing whatever they had.
The 15-inch Mark I naval gun fired a 1,938-pound shell at a velocity of 2,640 foot a second. To put this into context, this could fire up to a range of over 16 miles. A crew operating a twin 15-inch turret could fire 2 rounds from each gun every minute.
Germany embarked on building their own fleet of dreadnoughts to hit back at the competition, and although this surprised the British, they doubled their efforts. This was the start of the naval arms race, a major contributing factor to the war between Britain and Germany in 1914.
Britain's strategy was one of blockade. having plugged the North Sea with the Dover Patrol covering the English Channel and the Grand Fleet at Scapa Flow covering the Orkneys to the Norwegian coast. Germany's High Seas Fleet was effectively contained in the North Sea. This would, it was believed, limit German surface activity to minor actions and restrict both merchant and surface naval operations worldwide for Germany. Blockade would protect the Allied war effort, prevent the supply of raw materials that our enemies needed for weapons and ammunition, and starve its people into submission. It also allowed Britain to ensure a relatively safe passage for the British Expeditionary Force being sent to France.
The British Navy, just having an enormously powerful navy off the coast of Britain, off the coast of Europe, you're separated by the Channel, just so overpowered. And once you see Germany or someone else trying to up their game on the seas, then, that is everything to Britain's success as its navy. And you're not going to want to let anyone try and challenge you. So
Germany led a strategy of offensive operations, luring British forces out of port to take out the force piecemeal. In 1914, the German High Seas Fleet carried out North Sea raids on Great Yarmouth, Scarborough and Hartlepool. This drew out British ships into action, resulting in the Battle of Dogger Bank in January 1915.
Britain had a secret weapon at its disposal during the First World War: intelligence. At the start of the war, Britain had cut German
radar was World War II? Shoot, when was radar?
Communication lines,
World War II.
Forcing Germany to use British cables to communicate with the outside world. Then, on the 26th of August 1914, the German light cruiser SMS Magdeburg ran aground while scouting at the entrance to the Gulf of Finland. Efforts to refloat the cruiser were fruitless. Then attempts to scuttle her failed. Unfortunately for the Germans, Russian vessels arrived on the scene just as the Magdeburg's crew were trying to escape.
3 copies of German codebooks were captured. One was delivered by hand to London. By November, the British had worked out how to decipher German naval messages. The stage was being set for battle. Over the first 2 years of the war,
What? Am I speaking just from hindsight, and so it's obvious to me it might have... Burn that stuff. I get, you're going to want to panic and everything, and you want to scuttle the whole ship, but that seems like a giant blunder.
German fleet had never lured out the full force of Britain's navy.
That was their strategy. The German High Seas Fleet, led by Admiral Reinhard Scheer, had planned to draw out part of the British fleet to weaken its force. Scheer's Vice Admiral, Franz Hipper, led this daring mission with his battle cruiser scouting group. Scheer had the plan. He wanted to bring Admiral Sir David Beattie's battle cruiser fleet based in Rosyth and Admiral Sir John Jellicoe leading the Grand Fleet into the North Sea. Scheer's plan was to extinguish Beattie's battlecruiser force before Jellicoe's Grand Fleet had time to arrive, with Hipper's force spearheading the mission.
It was the crucial decisions of these individuals which led to the Battle of Jutland playing out as it did.
At the start, Scheer's plan looked as if it was going to work. It's early evening on the 30th of May 1916. The British Admiralty have intercepted messages revealing the German fleet's plan to set sail the following morning. They order Admirals Beattie and Jellicoe to sea.
At 10:30 p.m, the Grand Fleet, led by Jellicoe, leaves Scapa Flow, with Beattie following from Rosyth around the same time.
Vice Admiral Franz von Hipper's scouting force leaves port, with Admiral Reinhard Scheer leaving an hour later. HMS Galatea notices 2 German ships, signaling enemy in sight, firing the first shot of the battle at 2:28 p.m. At this point, Beattie orders a seaplane scouting sortie from HMS Engadine, piloted by Lieutenant Frederick Rutland. This is the first such reconnaissance mission of its kind. Rutland signals to HMS Engadine, spotting 5 German destroyers and 3 cruisers. The run to the south begins in an aim to cut Hipper's force off from returning to port.
Between 3:40 p.m. and 3:50 p.m., Jellicoe receives a message from Beatty.
I am engaging the enemy.
Hipper turns southeast with the aim of leading Beatty into the hands of the High Fleet. Sailing in parallel lines, both sides fire. SMS Lutzow hits HMS Lion's Q turret. Major Francis Harvey, aboard HMS Lion, suffers a severe injury which would later prove fatal, as he crawls to the voice pipe from his turret to speak to the gun magazine below, ordering the closure of the room doors and it to be flooded with seawater so the explosive material held in the magazine would not ignite.
HMS Indefatigable receives a direct fire from SMS Von der Tann. She explodes and sinks. Over 1,000 men lose their lives.
HMS Queen Mary receives a direct hit, exploding its magazine, killing over 1,200 crew. HMS Princess Royal, hidden behind the smoke and spray of the waves, is reported to be lost, however is only compromised of view.
In response to this news, Beatty reportedly exclaims,
There seems to be something wrong with our bloody ships today.
Commodore William Goodenough's cruiser squadron at the southern edge of Beatty's force sights Shear's High Seas Fleet. Cruiser squadron at the southern edge of Beatty's force sights Shear's High Seas Fleet. Beatty starts the run to the north in an aim to draw the German fleet into the hands of Jellicoe's Grand Fleet.
The Germans follow Beatty's forces.
HMS Chester is ordered to investigate gun flashes. 4 German light cruisers open fire on the ship. Almost all guns are put out of action in the crossfire, including this very gun behind me. This 5.5-inch gun was once installed on HMS Chester. It is this gun which Jack Cornwall mans during the Battle of Jutland.
As HMS Chester is hit 17 times, the scene aboard the ship becomes one of utter destruction. Crew lay dead with debris strewn across the ship. The entirety of Cornwell's fellow team are dead, and he himself is hit in the stomach and legs.
Cornwall, despite of his injuries, remains at his post and fulfills his duty. After the battle, HMS Chester returns to port in the River Humber, and injured persons are taken to hospital in Grimsby, where on the 2nd of June, Cornwall dies from his injuries. He was just 16 years old.
Jack
Jesus.
Cornwell was awarded this Victoria Cross for his actions at Jutland and became the youngest recipient of the honour. His funeral was a quiet one, without the formality of ceremony, but after his story was recounted in the press, it began to catch the public imagination.
This turned a boy from Essex into a memorialised icon of the First World War. His portrait was commissioned for the Admiralty. His image adorned stamps, and he even had a scout badge named after him.
At the same time as HMS Chester received its 17 direct hits, HMS Shark is also hit. Only 6 of its crew will survive the attack.
Jellicoe and Beatty's forces unite. The German fleet emerges from the mist to find the entire British fleet ahead of them.
The Grand Fleet completes a manoeuvre called Crossing the T, which moves a substantial proportion of the fleet across the approaching enemy force, creating a T-shape, giving the British a strong advantage as all its ships have the potential of firing on the enemy.
Isn't this what happened at Trafalgar, though? At Trafalgar? But Nelson and the British Navy were the ones that were going, and it actually worked to their favor. But maybe these era of ships are much more accurate than those, and so this is just more of a death wish.
This means the German fleet's leading ships can only use their forward-facing guns. Jellicoe's ships form into 6 parallel lines of 4 ships.
HMS Invincible engages SMS Derflinger and is hit, splitting in half, killing over 1,000 crew members.
The amount
Shear
of
fears
people
the
lost in
destruction
these
of his fleet. He orders the High Seas Fleet to turn and sail in the opposite direction.
The High Seas Fleet turns east in the direction of the Grand Fleet.
Jellicoe crosses the T for a second time. German ships charge at the British fleet, turning to launch a torpedo attack for cover.
Jellicoe turns to avoid the torpedo launch. This puts the Germans out of range, and at 7:45 p.m, Shear turns south.
Darkness begins to fall.
final shots are fired between both forces' battle cruisers. Jellicoe orders the fleet into a night cruising formation, with the signal, "No night intentions ordered." Scheer takes the shortest route to home, and the Grand Fleet follows, with both British and German fleets crossing paths, and short bursts of action occur for the next 6 hours.
Next, HMS Southampton sinks SMS Frauenlob. Jellicoe is unaware of the presence of German battleships when the 4th Destroyer Flotilla, at the rear of the fleet, engages in night action with German light cruisers and dreadnoughts. HMS Tipperary is hit.
HMS Black Prince is separated from its squadron and is sunk. All 900 crew are lost. Between 1 and 2 a.m, SMS Lutzow is scuttled after sustaining heavy damage. Between 2 and 2:15 a.m, the last action between British destroyers and German battleships and cruisers finally occurs. SMS Pommern is sunk, losing all its crew.
The British fleet reforms into day cruising, with light cruisers joining formation at 6 a.m. Beatty communicates to Jellicoe that HMS Queen Mary and HMS Indefatigable have been lost, 17 hours after they sank.
The Grand Fleet turns towards Scapa Flow. The fight is essentially over.
The Battle of Jutland saw periods of intense action and moments of relative inaction, but who, in the end, won?
Many historians have debated this question again and again because the answer is not so clear-cut. 6,000 British and 2,500 German servicemen were lost during the conflict.
I feel like I'm gonna listen to the rest, obviously, but I feel like even if it's, I feel like the British are always going to be the ones that are likely to win in the greater picture, even if the number of casualties and sunken ships are similar, because I think Britain just has a much more capable shipbuilding industry and probably much more ships, and so nipping a growing German navy in the bud might be more devastating to the Germans, even if the casualties and sunken ships are similar on each side. Does that make sense? Is that
And 2,500 German servicemen were lost during the conflict. Britain lost 14 ships, Germany 11. After the battle, each side would claim victory. Although British losses were greater than that of Germany, Jellicoe and the Grand Fleet had done enough to maintain naval superiority.
Yeah, exactly. It's like Germany, even if Germany, this is the big difference, even if Germany had a outstanding victory where it clearly, it lost like many less ships and men, well, you still have to deal with more of the giant British Navy coming in and beat them again, whereas they just have to beat you a few times, and what else can you do? How long are you going to,
A large operation against the British fleet was always going to be a challenge, and the scale of Jutland was not seen again during the First World War.
The Battle of Jutland may have helped to bring the war to an end. Because Britain had maintained its control above sea level, the Germans turned to unrestricted submarine warfare in an attempt to starve Britain out of the war. America condemned the targeting of merchant ships, and this threatened to bring them into the conflict. So, in January 1917, a German civil servant, Arthur Zimmermann, dispatched a now infamous coded message to the German ambassador of Mexico, proposing an alliance against America. Unfortunately for the Germans, Britain had been intercepting their messages. They were able to decode and share the message with America. This gave President Woodrow Wilson the impetus and political cover to bring America and their troops into the war, to crush German morale and to help Britain bring the fighting to a close. The outcome of the Battle of Jutland may have been ambiguous, but what is clear is that thousands sacrificed their lives in a crucial battle that influenced the course of the war and left its mark on history.
Very interesting. This would be a cool video to watch too. Love you guys. Hope you're all doing well. Hope you learned something or can teach me something in the comments. I am curious, how quickly did gunships go from that classic, wooden ship with cannons out on each side, like through the holes, to giant ships like with cannons like this, that they just seem like they're separated by centuries and centuries, when really they're just separated by like a century, you know. So I'm curious how, like, what were the in-between stages between your classic looking like wooden 18th century, early 19th century naval warfare ship to, you know, ships that even nowadays seem more similar to modern ships than they do to ships that they're probably even closer to in time, that were earlier versions of warships to here. Does that make sense? Very fascinating video. Hope you're all doing well. See you guys next time. Bye.